Hi, it's Wednesday and another special edition of the Zogby Report, real and unscripted. Jeremy and I look at the issues of the day, and when Spirit moves us, we decide to have a podcast rather than a regular Friday as we always have before. And so the breaking news is the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
The 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden, announced yesterday that he will seek a second term, and there he is. He's running for a second term, and of course, the real elephant in the room, not surprisingly, is his age. The fact that he's 80 now. When he runs, and should he win, he'd be 82, and hence 86 by the time he's left the presidency. No one has been older than 77. And that was a rarity as well, and that was Ronald Reagan. And so with all of that said, let me begin.
Sure.
Okay? And then you jump in. We're going to talk about this for a while. So on one hand, Mr. Biden enters this race with some clear advantages. One is he beat Donald Trump actually twice. The first time, even though there were close states like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, the fact is that he won by over 6 million votes, a landslide really in the Electoral College. And then he came back and defied history in 2022, really defied history by not losing that many seats in the House of Representatives, enough to lose a majority, and then going on and picking up a couple of seats in the U.S. Senate, where so many folks were talking about a big red wave. Secondly, as in terms of an advantage, he has a record of accomplishment. There can be no dispute about that when it comes to record infrastructure and record investment in alternative energy standards for 2030 into the future, and so on. Money placed directly in the hands of individuals, families, small businesses. We could go on. I could go on. In addition to that, he has made progress, let's say, on inflation, while at the same time keeping unemployment low. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. There's got to be a recession at some point, but there hasn't been yet. And I can only talk about what exists today, but the annualized rate of inflation is just a hair over 5%. It was just a hair under 10%. And so, several months ago. And so there is progress there. And he's finally, in terms of advantages, in terms of the issues that can energize Democratic voters, he has made some strides with the aid of the Supreme Court. The first is, of course, the abortion issue, which thus far anyway has won back suburban women voters who had swung over to the right in 2021 on the issue of education and critical race theory. He energizes younger voters and suburban moms on the issue of guns. And then thirdly, on the issue of the environment. In terms of a president of the United States on the environment, one can argue that he owns it. There are some distinct disadvantages. I'm going to get into those as well after you chime in. But among the advantages, those are all good reasons why he should run again, despite being 80 years old.
Yeah, I always knew that Biden wanted to. I wish I could be a fly on the wall during the highest level DNC meetings to know what's really going on behind the scenes. Of course, the Biden people are going to want Biden to run. Something tells me, if I were to guess or hypothesize, or even a little bit further than that, I would think that there are factions within the DNC.
Indeed.
Even beyond, progressive and establishment. Something tells me that there are some folks who don't want him to, and that there is a little bit of panic within. Hence, the fact that it took so long. I can't help but think that RFK Jr.'s announcement last week in Boston may have pushed that. I mean, it only came really less than a week after, and all these other times that articles had come out in Politico, CNN, questioning Biden's age. Is he going to run? All kinds of mixed signals. So anyway, here we are. He's going to run. What are the issues? You laid out all the reasons why it could be successful. Why the record that he has bringing into the race. Here are some things that I'd like to talk about. First and foremost is the issue of which primary goes first in the nation. We know that the DNC is hell-bent on removing New Hampshire's 100-year tradition of first in the nation, and putting South Carolina. Now, the justification is diversity, that it's time some new faces. South Carolina is almost half, maybe 40% black vote, at least on the Democratic side. Well, even higher.
Close
on
to
the
60,
Democratic
actually.
side. And so that is an appealing argument, in terms of diversity and inclusion and equity. But I don't think that's the real reason why South Carolina is going first. I actually think that a power move. I think that the DNC, those within the DNC faction that want Biden to run and got that Biden run, want to secure that Biden can be the nominee. And what better place to do it beyond demographics and support is a DNC stronghold. So this is beyond voters. This is beyond voter profiles. This is a state that is comfortably in the pocket of the DNC and has been for a while. I think
Can I just interrupt? It's in the pocket of Biden as well, too. He won it big.
I said that.
Yeah.
I said forget the voter profile. Moving beyond the voter profile and the demographics, it is in the pocket of the DNC. And so they have that going for them. Although I we'll see if that'll play out. Another troubling thing that I think needs to be raised is okay. So run with what you said. Well, let's assume all of that's true. Let's assume that the choice for South Carolina is really just good old-fashioned diversity, inclusion, and equity, and not power politics, and not backroom door type political moves. The other issue now is, and actually this is happening with both candidates, Trump and Biden, there are calls to shut down debates. And so that has huge implications for our democracy. I mean, when was the last time we had a presidential election and had no debates? I don't know. I don't know that we've ever had, in terms of primaries, okay? And so Biden and his people and many within the DNC say there should be no debates, yet we have two candidates who have declared. I think we need to ask this in our next poll question. What percent of Americans want to see primary debates within both the Democratic primary and the Republican primary? Now, I caught the headline, so I could be wrong, but yesterday it appeared that Trump is also calling for no debate. I don't know if that's 100% true, but if it is, that's very troubling. So, I mean, that to me is the biggest news. Some other things that we should probably bring up is, and I think you're going to segue into this, is that most polls of Democratic voters show that although they are favorable towards Biden, and many of them may rate his approval rating overall above 50% positive, or more than 50% of Democrats see his job as positive, there are high percentages. If you were to average most of the polls exclusively looking at Democratic voters, it's about half say they want him or he deserves reelection, and then another half who say it's time for somebody new. And that's pretty difficult starting out right now today with that. That's not wind at his sail.
Okay, those are all good points. He does have some distinct disadvantages. Interestingly, his approval rating is really worse than anemic. You know, last week at this time, the polls had his approval rating on average for the week at about 47-48%. The average is now 41%. That's exactly what we have him at. 41% approval, 54 disapproval. That is troubling.
Yeah.
When we match him and others match him head to head against Donald Trump, they're tied. You know, he's tied with Ron DeSantis. That's not the critical figure. It's that they're tied in the low 40s, 40, 41, 42%. An incumbent president polling 40, 41, 42% against a chief rival is not in good shape. Voters do have some serious questions about Joe Biden, even though they like him personally. You raised the point about whether he deserves to be reelected according to voters, according to Democrats, likely Democratic primary voters. And, you know, overall, 2 out of 3 voters, Democrats, Republicans, independents, don't want him to run for reelection. You know, it borders at around half of Democrats, let's say 40 to 48% or so, on the Democratic side don't want him to run for reelection. Those are powerful numbers. He gets low marks on individual issues, you know, whether it's immigration or foreign policy, even the war in Ukraine. So add all of that together into one pile, and then the other pile, questions about his age. He's got a lot to overcome. On the other hand, he has defeated Donald Trump twice. If there is a debate or a tete-a-tete of some sort, I still believe he is the only one out there who can say to Donald Trump, shut up. I don't see anybody else on the Democratic side being able to get away with that kind of street fighter. Now, one thing I want to lay to rest is that, yes, he is 80 years old, and yeah, he shuffles, maybe prematurely shuffling. He makes gaffes. 30-year-old Joe Biden made gaffes too. But I do have to admit that there are times I look at him and my mouth is open and I'm saying, please don't, please stop. I'm afraid of a stumble. I'm afraid of a hesitation. Interestingly, I saw even worse with Ronald Reagan in 1984, March 1st, 1985. I met Ronald Reagan face to face, and I can tell you at that point in time, he looked really gone to me. I don't see that in Joe Biden. But 80 is 80, 82 is 82, and that will be an issue. He best not stumble.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. I think part of the reason they don't want debates is because of his age. They, meaning the Biden people and his team. The other thing is when is he going to announce in person?
Oh, yeah, he will be out there, but as with all presidents, it will be staged and few. Remember, he got a pass 3 years ago with COVID. And he didn't have to, circle the entire country. I think they'll be his handlers and party leaders will be able to handle him.
It's something that I just raise a question that if he's going to, look, the political ad that they released the other day was a really good political ad. It was very effective. Whether you agree with that or not, it was a well-made political ad. But I was asking myself, why not release the political ad and something taped or in person? And so you put all these things together, and it's problematic. Again, I think the real question behind all of this, and age is an important question, is he with it and young enough and robust and vigorous and healthy enough to run? We don't know. The only way we would know is when there are debates. Should there be debates in the Democratic primary? Should there be? That's an important question. And the last thing I'm going to say, and this is going against Biden, is the classic barometric reading of the country, the right direction, off on the wrong track. I'm seeing polls as low as below 20%, 23%.
That's what we had.
Yeah, we had about a quarter, 24 actually, and others in the low 30s. The trend is, to my knowledge, if I have this correct, going back to Jimmy Carter, if a president were seeking re-election and he didn't have half of the voters, we'll say anywhere from 44, 45% at least, at minimum, who said that the country was headed in the right direction, and that started to fall into the high, low, mid 30s. There is a 1-to-1 ratio, to my knowledge, that president does not win re-election.
That's how I understand it as well. Well, I'll end only by saying that that not only do Biden and Trump need each other, they're very lucky to have each other. Because if there's anybody that could just neutralize the age question, it would be Donald Trump, who's only 2 years younger, and frankly rather overweight and not terribly healthy in terms of his lifestyle patterns. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is that we spent our time talking about the DNC, the lack of debate, the gerrymandering, let's misuse the word, but the maneuvering, in terms of the primaries. Meanwhile, and this will be a future topic for us, the Republicans have some serious internal problems, and at this moment in time anyway, a real lack of appeal to moderates and independents and suburban voters. That's another topic, but I think we aired this pretty well.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing because, at the same time, Donald Trump is really, really pulling ahead of DeSantis. There isn't one poll that has come out in quite. Actually, I'm not even sure in the last couple months that there's been one poll that showed DeSantis ahead. He was getting close at one point, within about 5 or 6, 7 percentage points. But interestingly enough, with the Republican Party appearing perhaps to be in disarray, Trump is still leading DeSantis in every poll by about 20 percentage points.
He is, and even a little bit more in some. The other dynamic here is the degree to which even those who in Congress and the leadership of the party who do not want Donald Trump are embracing him and endorsing him. So just last week, Ron DeSantis made a trip to Washington. He'd been a 3-term congressman in Florida, and he was hoping to revisit old friends on Capitol Hill, win their endorsements and announce their endorsements. He didn't get it. Even 3 of his former colleagues, especially 3 of his former colleagues in the Florida delegation, not only didn't endorse him, but really trashed him. One in particular, who said that DeSantis never engaged with him, never talked to him, never sponsored him when he needed some sponsorship, and actually used a fairly nasty word that begins with A to describe Ron DeSantis. This is from a former colleague in his own state.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, it looks to be a Biden-Trump matchup. But we are going to talk about Kennedy. He was a guest on our show, and we're going to talk about RFK in the future.
And look, I'm not suggesting that Trump has this sealed. One person that I'm particularly watching, though polling very low right now, is Tim Scott.
Yeah, I'm watching him too.
Senator Tim Scott, because I feel, has the, take a look at his announcement video. It was pretty good. And his story. If he can find the language that moves beyond his natural evangelical, very conservative base, and he can vie for independent voters and more moderate voters, and maybe even some disaffected Democrats, because of his very Obama-like story. I mean, as he says, from cotton to Congress, a very compelling story at a time when we're polling that the American dream is now, which isn't a bad thing, is becoming more spiritual in terms of how people find their fulfillment over material success and personal achievement. But we're also finding that a plurality of voters believes that the American dream is on life support. And if here's a guy who can say, I was born in the Deep South, I was born on a cotton farm, I saw my dad, disappear and go away, and I made it, and only in this country, that could be powerful stuff amidst the backdrop of Trump and Trump Light being DeSantis, alienating the RNC voters.
Yeah, I want to pick up on the notion of stories, but I think we've gone on long enough. We'll talk about it again. That's it for today. A lot more politics.
Yeah.
Take care.
Yeah.